What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleash, the weekly panel discussion show. Before we begin, let me go ahead and there we go. Make that nice switch in the order that I introduced these two gentlemen who don't need an introduction, but we love them so much, we're going to introduce them anyway. Standing exactly to my left in TV speak is the jack of all trades who has mastered them all, Ben Duffy, the senior editor of Sherdog.com. Ben, what's going on?
I'm doing real well, man. It's an exciting week to be a mixed martial arts fan, isn't it? I have the feeling that we're probably going to set some sort of record for the number of different promotions and cards that we talk seriously about today. So let's just dig in.
Yeah, this is going to be a uniquely busy week in the sport of MMA, something we haven't seen since pre-COVID days, quite honestly. And of course, the man who anchors the panel every single week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com, Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on, my man?
You know, we were thinking about preparing the show and what we were going to cover. It kind of behooved us to just simply talk about all the ridiculous fight coverage that's coming our way, because every major promotion, it seems, is going to be doing something this month, especially. The heavies. We got the Asian promotions. We got Combats Global now is coming back because that's a name. This is a good week for the sport, and I'm looking forward to that. But speaking of good weeks. A certain Bellator fighter over this past weekend had a good week as well. Magomedov, one of the, I don't know how many Magomedovs out there, but you can call him Tiger, tapped out CJ Hamilton in Bellator. And the reason why this is the stat of the week is because he was a minus 3,050 favorite, over a 30-1 favorite, which, by the way, is the biggest betting favorite in Bellator history. I checked. So there you go.
And that's saying something, because I enjoy Bellator greatly, but they know from squash matches sometimes.
MVP and AJ McKee, we got
Coco will set up a squash match like there's no tomorrow. So to be the biggest betting favorite in the history of the promotion means anything short of actually murdering the man in the cage is a disappointment. So wow. And I mean, Magomedov, whichever version of Magomedov we're talking about here, he certainly lived up to the odds makers' expectations right there. Like, he almost decapitated him with that RNC. So pretty cool stat right there, Jay. So let's talk a little bit more about the aftermath of Bellator 255. We saw Patricio Pitbull, the featherweight and lightweight champion of the promotion, secured his ticket to the finale against AJ McKee with a first-round guillotine over Emmanuel Sanchez. An extraordinarily dominant performance right there. I mean, this was just cold, calculated, just veteran. I came here to do business and do away with you. Just absolutely phenomenal performance by him. And now that kind of begs the question here. We talk about a lot of the homegrown talent that Bellator has, and they don't get enough credit for their homegrown talent, in my opinion. You got your Ben Askren's, you got your Michael Chandler's, who's going to make his first attempt at a UFC title here in the next coming weeks. A lot of homegrown talent coming out of that promotion. Patricio Pitbull, like, where does he rank on that list? I mean, I think there is a solid argument to say he is the best talent that the promotion has ever produced. I mean, would you agree with that? I think Ben just answered there. Ben, expand on that lovely display of a GOAT.
It took a while for Patricio Pitbull to come along. He was just another good featherweight for the first long chunk of his career. Like, he wasn't some phenom that came out of nowhere. Early on when he was fighting, like the Joe Warrens of the world, he was another good featherweight. The first greatest homegrown Bellator talents were definitely Cole Conrad and Ben Askren. Michael Chandler was it for the longest time, but it's Pitbull at this point. The head-to-head victory kind of seals it for me, but it would have been neck and neck otherwise. They basically co-owned the record book right until Chandler jumped off, and now Pitbull is kind of passing all of his longevity-based records. But it's not just that; it's that in the current Sherdog rankings, he is now the number 4 featherweight in the world. I personally think that's just about perfect. You know, he's ranked behind 3 guys I would slightly favor to beat him. I would favor him to beat basically everybody behind him. That's as high as a Bellator fighter has ever gotten fighting just in Bellator. And I mean, that says it all to me. He's one of the very best fighters on the planet. He is benefiting from how well Chandler did in his UFC debut, and his stock will only rise further if Chandler wins the title, obviously, because he's still a guy that iced him. Yeah. But yeah, like he's the greatest talent Bellator's ever produced at this point.
Jay, are you picking up what Duffy's putting down here?
I am, and it's funny that like statistically speaking that Michael Chandler and Patricio Freire were so just constantly just stepping over one another. Who's got the most fights? Who's got the most wins? This and that and the other thing. Finishes. I think they share the record with 13 apiece. So they are the record books. You know, you can write the record books, and any story about Bellator has to include Chandler and Pitbull. This Pitbull. Now Patricio is a staple, but obviously his brother has the one who has gained the accolades. And what's interesting the most to me is that I think obviously the fact that Pitbull demolished Michael Chandler in a minute is a very clear step over, and the fact that Pitbull has pound for pound consideration by changing his weight class, which is something that not a lot of fighters do, other than like Michael Page taking 173 pound fights or something. But what's interesting, as I've circled back to that, is that AJ McKee ain't far away, because this is a kid who is 17-0 in Bellator. That's way the longest win streak. It's not even close. I think the old record is Askren's, like maybe Conrad's or Askren's. So
Conrad only got to nine fights in Bellator, something like that. Yeah.
That's what's so crazy is that McKee has won all 17 fights, and he's about to fight Pitbull. If he beats Pitbull, he's not far away from becoming King Bellator himself, which is so odd to think that how much Pitbull has accomplished. I mean, that his last loss was to Ben Henderson, a former UFC champion, in a fight. He was winning. 2, he moved up in weight. And the third is that he snapped his leg in half in a fight he was winning. Like, so it's clearly that there's an asterisk on his last loss dating back the last 5 years or so. At this point, it's almost unfair to not consider Pitbull among the greatest fighters just out there in the sport. Like, Bellator obviously has a competitive disadvantage. The more fighters in the UFC, there's the better fighters are tested against one another. So it's hard to see how Pitbull would do. But considering he's beaten all of them in the past forever, you know, you think of his last real loss was to Daniel Strauss. And what did he do? He choked out Daniel Strauss 2 times before and after. So this is just, he is Sir Bellator for the next foreseeable future. And, I almost think that it took too long for him to get the recognition he deserved. And it wasn't just this demolition of Sanchez where he dropped him and then wrenched his neck off and put him to sleep with a guillotine. It's just the body of work is just tremendous.
Definitely. Pitbull has certainly cemented himself, in my opinion, as well as the top guy to ever come out of Bellator. And, you know, granted, I still think Michael Chandler has time to kind of wash the bad taste out of our mouths of when he met Patricio, but I just find it very unlikely that we're going to see that. It would take Chandler to have a sustained run as UFC lightweight champion to kind of undo the damage that fight did to their neck and neck race as far as being Mr. Bellator. But man, how crazy is this AJ McKee matchup? Like, this is when this Bellator Grand Prix was first announced, and that was sort of the matchup that we all wanted to see, but we were kind of gritting our teeth. Like, is it gonna happen simply because AJ at the time was a largely unproven prospect, and Pitbull was going to have to go through his own murderer's row to make it to that finale? But now this is what we get. Like, I'm really, really excited. I'm more excited for this fight than I can think of any other fight in the promotion's history, save for maybe the rematch between Chandler and Alvarez. What do you guys think?
I completely agree, and I'm going to do a terrible thing and like throw out the horrible hypothetical and rain on this parade. If McKee beats Pitbull convincingly, Bellator struggles immediately for next steps for him. What are they going to do? Have McKee fight Sanchez, Adam Boric, his best friend Aaron Pico? He's going to have to move up to lightweight almost immediately and try to become a 2-division champ. I mean, this isn't even a division where Ryzen can do much to help him. What's he going to fight, Darren Cruikshank?
Kai Asakura? No, Mikuru Asakura.
Yeah, like that's the problem, because McKee has kind of taken his time getting up. He's beaten a lot of the mid-tier guys at Bellator on his way up. Like, if he beats Pitbull in a way that doesn't command an immediate rematch in a couple months, Bellator is immediately on, like, the clock is running for them to figure out something to do with this guy.
Well,
or he's gonna start complaining, start making noise, and he won't be long for Bellator.
You knew that was going to happen if McKee obviously wins. This is a very big if here. But that's the situation that Chris Cyborg ran into immediately after her first fights. What wasn't her Bellator debut against the champion Julia Budd, the best fighter in the division by leaps and bounds. It was just a rhetorical question that she throttled Budd. She was never threatened. The one thing I thought Julia Budd would be able to do didn't even come close to happening. And so now Chris Cyborg has to fight Arlene Blenko. Now she has to fight Leslie Smith again, because that's cool. It's that once you beat the best in the division, and you work your way to the top, or you now are fighting the top, the rest of the division, it's none of the options are that appealing. Like, again, I mean, Duffy, you're right on the money. I mean, Emmanuel Sanchez is a great fighter in his own right, but he just got just lanced, whatever word you want to use for it. He doesn't deserve a crack at that. Most of the featherweight guys in the bracket have lost. So what are you going to do? How do you match him? Which means you obviously have to go and do that champ thing, which, why? I understand in his case why, because he would be facing the same opponent at a different weight class. So it's not a natural welterweight moving down to lightweight. It's not a weight difference situation like when Ben Henderson fought Andre Koreshkov or Jason Jackson. You look, oh boy, here's a huge difference here. At least they're going to be the same size at 155, should that come to fruition. But man, I want to see what Bellator's, how they handle it, because they have some odd situations in the rankings.
Here's the big difference. When Cyborg came across, she had already wiped that division, and she had already burnt her bridges with the UFC.
True that.
AJ McKee, a year from now, might be looking across at like the Max Holloways and Brian Ortegas of the world and saying, I can beat those guys, but nobody's going to believe it until I do.
Yeah, the thing is, I think that Bellator has already laid the blueprint of what they can do with AJ McKee. Should he beat Pitbull in a way that we don't necessarily need to see it run back. And look no further than the way we open the show, talking about the level of mismatches. You can put Emmanuel Sanchez or Weichel or any the other fighter that kind of washed out of the Grand Prix in front of McKee and extend the life of his featherweight championship reign for as long as you want. If they can dig up old plumbers and taxi cab drivers to fight MVP, they can find a UFC cast off or someone who got booted out of the Tough House or the Contender Series to fight AJ, and they can just make him a star in within that bubble. And I think that has worked very well for MVP. It can definitely work for someone with the personality of AJ McKee. In fact, this guy is clearly being groomed for something beyond just being a fighter, considering his spot on the analyst booth for the first Showtime presentation of Bellator. So if Bellator comes up with the money that's going to be needed to keep him in in some level of contentment, then I think we can see this go on for a little while. Now, if his competitive juices start flowing, which I suspect they will at some point, then we might have an issue. Maybe by that time the Aliak will be a thing, and this conversation will be all for naught. But we'll see what happens. Either way, I'm so looking forward to the finale of the Grand Prix. So getting back to some of the matchmaking with Bellator, I mean, on the card of Bellator 255, we had a few fighters who were ranked fighting unranked opponents. We saw winners calling out higher ranked competition. I mean, how is the promotion going to handle this wrinkle in the matchmaking, or do they just not handle it at all and just keep things as are?
Bellator, I mean, I railed about this last week with Mike Jackson guesting with us about how the Bellator rankings were a bit squidgy. They didn't follow their own rules. There were certain fighters that hadn't fought in a year and a half. There were a bunch of other weird things. Corey Anderson's is 1-0 with a win against Melvin Manhoof, and he's a top pound-for-pound fighter. So rankings have issues, period, already out of the gate. But what the issue that Bellator has painted itself into the corner, and this is what I alluded to last week, is that now fighters are going to be looking at these rankings, planning the next fight. They're going to be trying to work their way up these imaginary ranking systems, which is difficult when they're so out of whack. I mean, Aaron Pico is the number 6 featherweight in the world, according to Bellator, or number 7 with the champion involved. Would you really want to see Aaron Pico fight Emmanuel Sanchez? The rankings are only 4 apart, and that's the kind of thing that Bellator is running itself into. I joked about Gorgi Karakanian last week. What was the other one? There was another one. Was it Magomedov, or was it the other Usman Nurmagomedov who wanted to move up the rankings, and he was kind of stuck depending on who his opponents were. That and Magomedov are already looking up and going, well, who's left in front of me? For Magomedov, he trains with he is managed in the same team as Patchy Mix, so he already ruled that fight out. So then you got Rafian Stotts, James Gallagher, Sergio Pettis, and Juan Archuleta are the only 4 opponents in front of him that can possibly be faced. According to him, he's not going to take fights against people ranked below him. And I think that's a superiority complex Bellator doesn't need. Like, this is a promotion that is notorious for throwing in late notice replacements and unweird foes. Like, I mean, Michael Venum Page is the number 1 welterweight in the world. His last 2 fights were not at welterweight at all. Like, they were just 175, 173, do your thing, kid, have fun. So we're stuck with now Bellator doing its matchmaking, but also trying to adhere to this ranking system that matters now. It matters, and that's the crappiest part of it. It very possibly could be a factor in fighter contracts, is if you are ranked a certain amount, you may be able to earn a certain dollar amount. We know the UFC has provisions like that for rankings and how you advance. Commissions don't license fights for the UFC if there's a ranking disparity between the two. So how can Bellator sell the number 1 welterweight in the world fighting against newcomer alpha? Like, Ross Houston's a tough kid. I like him a lot. His last fight before he joined Bellator was called off because it was the bloodiest fight that we'd ever seen. You go back a long time ago in our history, and you can recall me breaking this ridiculous bloody fight down. But then you saw the fight happen and went, oh, yeah, I see that. And so Bellator is hamstringing itself here. So I don't know how they're going to go. I want to know how you think they're going to go, though.
I think they're just going to abandon this whole thing. That's really what I think is going to happen, because this is providing headaches that they don't need. This is already straining a pretty thin roster as far as top ranked talent. I don't really see the point of this, and it's something that has been critically panned, by most media. It's something that clearly is not like doesn't have any practical value. I mean, you just laid out the scenarios where this just all unravels. It serves no purpose for them moving forward. Like I think this is going to be a very, very short-lived experiment.
Duffy, I'm curious your thoughts. Can they abandon the ranking system as, you know, they wheel it out and go, oh, this was a big mistake? Can they do that, or would that make things even worse?
I mean, they certainly can do it. One thing, whether you consider it a virtue or a fault, is that Bellator lacks kind of the bullheadedness at the top where they never take a step back or never admit that anything they did was a mistake. Ant has given the kind of realistic outlook here that I generally line up with. Just for the hell of it, I'll give the optimistic scenario that, okay, we knew the rankings, the first set of rankings would be a mess. It's hard sledding. You know, take a bunch of fighters, some of whom have been around for a long time, some of whom have not, and kind of put them into any order, you know, just out of nowhere. That's a tough job. You know, the Sherdog rankings would be a nightmare every week if we didn't have last week's rankings to work off of and adjust. They could adjust it and get better at it going forward. The existence of the rankings will continue to draw attention to the thinness of their roster. So if they want the rankings to resonate and they want the rankings to do what they want them to do, they're going to need to remedy that. They're just simply going to have to get more people on roster and keep them busier, which now that they're, you know, back putting on cards and they're putting on, well, maybe unnecessarily long cards in some cases, all of a sudden they become necessarily long because, you know, you have more fighters that you need that you need to keep in action. Because my takeaway from it is that no matter what people on, you know, the Sherdog forums or the UG forums say, fighters care about rankings. Most fighters look at them obsessively. You know, fighters interviewed on the Jordan Breen show back in the day would always talk about their rankings, you know, and complain about them. You know, I remember Ian McCall complaining about being ranked behind a bunch of Japanese dudes and stuff like that. You know, they care. And these fighters clearly care because they had the name and ranking of another fighter in their mind, in their mouth, as soon as their fight was done. So if you're going to do it, understand that the fighters are going to care about it and they're going to refer to it and just use it as a cue to shore up, you know, your roster problems.
Yeah, well said. I mean, and just this should be very interesting to see how this plays out. I do want to know what those rankings will look like in the next several weeks. Just to see a few different iterations of it and everybody kind of get their legs underneath of them and they have a guide to go by. And this is a very good point. I can't imagine what a nightmare those discussions about rankings would be like if we didn't have something there to kind of guide us. At least we know, like, have a baseline of where we're working from. So you might be right. Perhaps I'm just a pessimistic jerk, which I think is just true regardless of this conversation. It's just me. So yeah, fuck it. So now, gentlemen, let's move on to the Eating Crow segment. Break out your seasoning salt, your cracked pepper, perhaps some paprika. I don't know if you know about that. But yes, Ben, I'll start with you. What's got you eating crow this week?
I mean, I have to go with Alejandra Lara versus, why is her name escaping me right now?
Kana Watanabe.
Thank you, Kana Watanabe. I picked Lara in this one, just expecting that her athleticism, her size, her strength, she'd be able to frustrate what Watanabe wanted to do. I figured Watanabe would be able to take her down a few times. She is an elite judoka. I mean, from a clinch, hands on each other, she could probably dump me on my ass and I'm twice her size. But I didn't expect Lara to basically elect to lose the fight by not really trying to get up off her back in the third round. I mean, it was anybody's fight going into the third round, and she got taken down and just kind of let it go, you know, threw up a few little submission attempts from her back, but just lost the fight. And it's just not how I expected it to turn out. She's not a perfect fighter. She's somebody that was thrown into a title shot like way, way ridiculously too early in her career, then came right back from that and had to fight Juliana Velasquez, the next champ. So I'm like, okay, you're like, you know, a 6-3 fighter that really, just hasn't been matched very well. But this was the first time she went into a fight that I fully expected her to win and did not perform. And so, yeah, it's kind of a back to the drawing board moment for her, as well as for me as a fight prognosticator. Thanks, Alejandra Lara, for the crow.
All right. Jay, what's got you eating crow this week?
Now, I made a bolder prediction about this fight than I usually do for our prime pick sections of Sherdog, for betting odds and the specifics that stand out that make sense to bet on. Somebody is overvalued, somebody's undervalued. There's you could make some money off a big underdog, that kind of thing. Don't bet on CJ Hamilton. That was not one of my bets as a 1,600 or whatever it was underdog against Tiger Magomedov. No thanks. But I had Neiman Gracie doing that Gracie thing. That Gracie thing that he does so well. He's one shy of the Bellator record. He remains one shy of the Bellator record for the most submissions in company history. But here's the thing. He had Jason Jackson mounted multiple times. He had back control multiple times. And the ass-kicking machine, which is still an excellent nickname, just got out of it. And I don't know how. I rewatched the fight. I don't know how his scrambles worked because Gracie was still on him until he wasn't. So this to me was the kind of fight where Jason Jackson would try and brute force his way out of submission danger. And what happens historically when people try and outmuscle a smaller grappler? Well, for some reason, this didn't happen. And not only that, there was a bunch of oddness that happened. Jason Jackson got an eye poke from the fence. It was... And the judge's decision was also, I believe, incorrect. So I eat crow because Neiman Gracie lost, but I also eat crow because I thought he was going to tap Jason Jackson. And I don't know what happened. Like, if it was a mental lapse, whatever made it not happen, it was queued up. It was on the silver platter multiple times. I'm not a jiu-jitsu practitioner anymore, so I can't tell you exactly the minutia that went into positions, but Neiman Gracie had the kid mounted. This is a thing where 99 times out of 100, he switches over, hits a spiderweb armbar, boom. Jason Jackson turns over, gives up his back, surrenders his neck, boom. Things like that happened, and then Gracie couldn't hit it. So, yum, that crow is delicious. I messed that one up.
I left that one for you, even though that was on my list as well. I just assumed that Jackson went to like a jiu-jitsu clinic put on by Derek Lewis and Charles Bennett. Dude, since his last fight, they're like, "No, dude, you just got to get up.
Just don't believe. Just don't believe it works. Then you'll be fine."
I mean, Jay, like just pass the bowl over to me because that's my eating crow as well. Like you straight up like stole everything out of my brain the way you described that, because I was watching and like you get mounted by a Gracie, that's it. Like that's it. There's like, if you just have the last name Gracie and you've never seen a jiu-jitsu school, you've never worn a gi, you tend to be pretty damn good if you're mounted on someone. Like that's just it. To see Jason Jackson just Derek Lewis's way out of stuff was mind-blowing. Like I did not expect that at all. And then the eye poke on the fence was another layer of weird, and then to like win a fight after the fence eye pokes you. Like I think of the fence eye poking me, I'm done for like the rest of the year. Like I'm no good to the world at that point. But this guy actually won a fight after getting poked in the eye by a fence in the first round. But ridiculousness right there. So the crow's tasting really good. Now, gentlemen, let's move on, and we'll just use this for our swing or miss portion of the show. Reebok is at least as far as the UFC is concerned, no longer outfitting the fighters. Instead, we have moved on to Venum. We had a release of the payouts that was announced last week, I believe it was, maybe a couple days after we last taped. I mean, do you think that this new deal is an improvement for fighters, or it's more of the same? Swing or miss, Jay?
Oh, you're gonna have to miss me with this one for a couple of reasons. Well, there's a few to get surface analysis out of the way. The deal pays less than Reebok's, like just just not only in a flat dollar amount, but it's a 3-year deal instead of a 7-year deal. And apparently, according to Lawrence Epstein, COO of UFC, they're being the UFC is being paid less money for this deal. So that stings. And the UFC tried to shine it up by saying we're going to throw an additional $1 million at the fighters this year. But if you recall, this was a big story, and I believe it was Mike Bone of MMA Junkie who put this out about the Reebok outfitting policy pay and how the fighters had been paid, what was it, 35 grand, or I'm sorry, 35 million out of the 70 million that they were supposed to be paid according to the UFC at the beginning. And we were very clear. The numbers were, released. The UFC put out that information, so you didn't have to make anything up. There it was, 12 fights, this much dollar amount, and so you do the math and you go, oh, wow, fighters really got ripped off here. So Venum pays less, UFC is going to pay more, and they boosted the dollar amounts by a little bit, like 1 to 3 fights get like $4,000 instead of $3,500. It looks better just from a raw dollar amount number, but then you think of things like inflation, where it's actually not a cost of living raise, because $3,500 then gets you more than $4,000 does now, just the way economics and that kind of thing work. So I don't know why the UFC did this, other than this was their only option. Like, was Venum the highest bidder? Because that really, really stings if they take less money, a shorter deal. And this is something that I believe it was Chad Dundas that pointed out. I can't remember exactly. The UFC historically, when there's good news, they shout it from the rooftops. You'll be the first to know something great's happening. Check it out. Look how awesome this is. It's, as of the recording, it's April 5th. The UFC event that unveils these things is April 10th. Supposedly, on April 6th, Tuesday, there will be the wheel out. If this worked out and this were a good situation, we would have known more than 4 days ahead of the event. So I really, having seen some background information, having seen some leaked pieces of gear and footage and whatever, we shouldn't be looking too forward to this. And I hate to be a bummer, but we're going to be sorely disappointed what we're about to see.
Ben,
just since it's apparently my role tonight, I will take the optimist chair. I'll say this. I mean, a fighter standpoint, I talked to Alex Morono, UFC welterweight, a couple months ago, and he was looking forward to the deal. They'd had a sneak peek at what the rates were going to be. He is a fighter with over 10 fights in the UFC, so that's the between 10. He has between 11 and 20 fights in the UFC, so that's the tier he's on. He knew he'd be getting a little more money. He was excited that the UFC was going to be working with an actual fight wear company rather than a general sports apparel company that was going to, use the UFC to try to push their fight wear line. He's also a gym owner and a coach. He's like, hey, maybe we'll get a break on Venum gear. He's like, I think they make the best shin guards in the game. I buy them for my own team and for my own gym. That'd be great. So as kind of a fight head, he was excited for it. On a macro level, looking at this at a UFC level thing, yeah, it's kind of surprising that Venum was the one that came out of the bidding process as the winner. But why would a mega company sign on for this? Why wouldn't they look at the 4-year Reebok experiment and say, okay, I don't know the numbers, but anecdotally from Ben's point of view, it didn't sell fight kits to the general public. I mean, I remember the day I saw a woman in a Rousey fight kit hoodie walking away from me, and I followed her for half a block because I figured it must be Ronda Rousey. Because who else would and you take the temperature. This was reviled by the fans, reviled by the media. Like, why would Under Armour sign up for that? Like, they'd be like, why would we touch that? That is poison. It is an unreasonably demanding fan base, even by the standards of sports fan bases. It's a snarky and largely independent media that are going to tear us apart. Like, why would we sign up for that? And you know, it may not even have recouped their investment in terms of selling gear to the general public. So yeah, I mean, that's about as optimistic as I can get about it. I'm cautiously optimistic that this will do well, that the fighters will be happy with it, that, you know, hell, maybe even, you know, fans will buy a few things, and this will renew into a bigger, better deal in a few years.
I'm going to go ahead and miss on this being an improvement for the fighters overall. I mean, the payouts is really what it's all about, and it's just not there. Now, I don't think that's the fault of Venum, nor do I think like Reebok was at fault for the payouts to the fighters under its era. I mean, that's something that the UFC is responsible for the big brand that's attaching itself to the UFC. It's like, well, they're going to get the best price for it. So for Reebok, what the deal was worth was $70 million. Mm-hmm. And you think of like LeBron signing $100 million deal to Nike, you know, one athlete. Remember when the rumors of Under Armour having the role before Reebok, and I think at the same time they were signing Steph Curry to somewhere near 100 million for one guy, and to get an entire sports league, the premier sports league in mixed martial arts, for the price less than one athlete in the NBA. Well, it sounds like a good damn deal. And let the UFC figure out how they're going to pay their fighters. That's the perspective of those brands. But I think Venum is kind of, I mean, for all the credit that Venum deserves, I think for the quality of their gear, I'll second with what Alex Morono said about their shin guards. I think they make great shin guards. I've used their boxing gloves before. It's really good stuff. The thing is, though, that you look at the big brands that are just general sports brands, and there's some asterisk next to them in relation to committing to the UFC. Reebok, obviously, that did not go very well overall. Adidas owns Reebok. So is Adidas going to put their big brand into this now that their smaller brand failed? No. And on top of that, apparently Reebok hadn't done too well during the pandemic, and they're looking to sell that brand. Like Master P, I think, is trying to buy it as we speak. Nike abandoned mixed martial arts quite some time ago. Around the time John Jones and Daniel Cormier knocked the stage over, Nike decided to pull the plug on sponsoring American mixed martial artists. I think that their Anderson Silva and JDS deals ran out until, but they didn't renew them. So Nike pretty much has no interest in mixed martial arts if things are the same as they were a few years ago. Under Armour, a brand that does care about MMA to an extent by their partnership with Georges St. Pierre and their role in bidding, at least to outfit the UFC previously. But from what I understand, they're in a mess due to some sexual harassment allegations going on with their CEO. So that company is kind of, and I think they took some losses as well over last year. So they're not exactly in the best position. And then you're left with the other brands that deal specifically with combat sports, like your Everlast, your Hayabusas, Venum will be a part of that as well. And out of those, guess Venum just won out the contract. So I think it's great for them. I mean, it's good to see that the UFC has historically abandoned the mixed martial arts loyal, as it's done with the media. For instance, I think that's a good example to where, like I covered UFC 229 live for Sure Dog, and I couldn't get a cage side seat because Home and Garden TV or some random channel that has nothing to do with MMA was cage side. So like they give preferential treatment to outlets that have nothing to do with MMA and turn their backs on outlets that do. This is the exact opposite of that. This is now the biggest brand in MMA has now decided to feed into the culture of mixed martial arts as opposed to running counter to it. And Venum is kind of a staple in your average fight gym. So I like it from that sense. I like it for Venum. not necessarily for the fighters as far as their payouts are concerned, but that's a UFC issue. So, yeah.
Now, there's a few thoughts that I've had about this that I kind of want to circle back on. The fact that we still don't know to the extent of Venum's involvement with the UFC is troubling, because we as media should at least know what types of apparel and attire and gear is Venum creating for the UFC and providing. Are they just doing apparel, the fight kits and the shirts and the fight week stuff? Are they using gloves? Well, they're not doing. We know they're not using gloves because UFC has a whole thing about that. But any sort of training gear and shorts and beyond fight shorts, anything like that, we don't know. But we should probably assume they're not going to. That this is going to be a fight kit kind of thing, like the Power Ranger, or a yellow and red and blue that they wheeled out many years ago with Reebok. I mean, having seen the gear. You raised a spectacular point, Ant, about how the UFC has abandoned traditional notions of MMA and tried to treat it as something different, something better, something mainstream and more. When, like, I mean, just to use an example, the UFC with the Reebok deal intended on the Reebok outfits being uniforms, that they would be uniform across the fighters, that they would be small differences, but it would say their name and maybe their country of origin and maybe a couple color changes, but it would serve like a jersey from any particular sports team. That ain't this market, which is pretty obvious when we've seen the pushback. And having seen some of the prototypes, some of the plans they're wheeling out, Venum ain't changing that. Venum is going uniform, that is going to be small changes from what we've seen. When this is an individual member sport. So there should be some sort of customization to make the appeal for different fighters. And I think that's a lost opportunity that died when Reebok took over. And I really hope that something changes to make Venum allow for that. But well.
You know what? Another point, man, I want to bring up too. Now, we're still confused about the level of gear that's going to be involved.
Yeah,
that was one thing that the UFC got right with Reebok. Because Reebok they at least had their own combat line, like the boxing gloves and whatnot. And you'd see some fighters wearing them for media workouts and whatnot, but they allowed the fighters, even in official UFC appearances at media workouts and whatnot, to wear whatever gear they wanted. That did keep some revenue stream for some fighters alive, because you didn't have to have the Reebok gloves. If you had Hayabusa gloves and you had a contract with Hayabusa, then they're going to pay you. Or if you had Venum or whatever, or Everlast, whatever other brand, you might have been able to pick up a check from that. So if they move over to just to mandating that the fighters use that gear in official appearances, which I'm presume might include like countdown shows and whatnot. I mean, that's a revenue stream, another revenue stream from sponsorship that's being snatched away, even if they make good gear.
I can actually speak to that because I've seen the language, the interview with Epstein, that fighters can still have their sponsors like before. Their Monster Energy, obviously they have that separate deal, but they can also have their individual things. GSP came back, he'd probably still be able to do something with Under Armour for, quote, non-fight week related stuff. The word stuff was actually used. And the other difference is that fighters now have to submit their mouthpieces for authorization and clearance from the UFC. So any sort of logos or any sort of whatever they may have, you can have, I think the fighters can have names, country flags, and maybe Andre Arlovski can have his teeth.
Certain designs and whatnot.
But anything that says anything else on it.
Yeah.
UFC's gotten that.
But that was the language of the Reebok contract. You could still have your, whatever sponsorship you have outside of the fight, but that's what everyone cared about them for. So it took away revenue from them. So if I'm a fighter with an Everlast contract, I can't wear my gloves on the countdown show or the Prime show, whatever the countdown shows, whatever they're called. I don't watch some things anymore. well, maybe Everlast don't want to pay me no more. And now considering that my outfitting payout is, you know, for practical purposes due to inflation less than what it was before, and you're taking that revenue stream as well. You know, I mean, this just feels like the UFC trying to exert more unnecessary control, nickeling, diming its own talent
over its own contractors, not employees. By the way, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, good point there. Good point there. All right, Ben, anything you want to add to that before we move things forward?
I guess just one last thing is that at least the UFC is dealing with a company that's been building fightwear for, you know, years and years. Because I don't know if you remember, but one of the big problems with the Reebok deal when it launched is that the women's fight tops were not well designed. Yep. And we had wardrobe malfunctions and constant complaints. And it took months to get fixed. Months, like many fights for it to get fixed. At least these should fit, you know, right off the bat, and we shouldn't get, was it Raquel Pennington falling out of her top on camera?
Elizabeth Phillips, maybe Rocky.
Elizabeth Phillips. No,
yeah,
no, it was Elizabeth Phillips. Thank you. You know, so, you know, thank God for small mercies, I guess.
Yeah, that's something there. All right, so we're going to move things along to the greatest title segment in all of media history, and that's I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not since we last recorded. I'm going to begin with you, Ben. What is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, this week, former UFC bantamweight title challenger Kat Zingano announced that she is launching a $10,000 scholarship fund to help students overcome like personal family loss. Zingano, of course, famous first probably for her like brief and unsuccessful challenge for Ronda Rousey's title. But for those who are familiar with the sport past, you know, the surface level, very famously, her husband and coach, Mauricio Zingano, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt and teacher, committed suicide in 2014, like after she was already an active and well-known like rising contender of a fighter. It was, you know, it was a horrible tragedy. But even before that, her mother died of brain cancer when she was in her early 20s, was, you know, going through college. It completely derailed her life track. And in light of that, she's partnered with a company or, you know, a group called bold.org to create the scholarship fund for, you know, for students, young people in that same situation. Zingano is somebody that we have not been averse to poking fun at here and there. You know, she will say and do some outrageous things. She's one of those very emotional, heart on your sleeve type people who will sometimes kind of misstep in terms of PR. But I mean, this is all win. Like, I hope this succeeds. I hope it spreads the message, the awareness, and certainly the direct financial help far and wide. So I am, I guess, a little surprised to find her in the news right now for, you know, such a fantastic reason. But that is my story for the week.
Very, very good one. Definitely hope that succeeds. Like she's been through so much. So it's good to see like her turning her personal tragedies into something helpful for society. So definitely big shout out to Kat Zingano on that one. Jay, what is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
So a thing happened in Philadelphia this past weekend. And Philadelphia is not the place you think it would happen. You think it might happen in some other country with less regulations, lower quality equipment, something like that. But basically, if you'll use my image to show what happened, this happened. So Kitag Pliev, a 2012 Olympic wrestler, competed at CFFC 94 against Devin Goodale. And so, all right, just to make it brief, blocked a kick to the head, broke his finger, kind of already crooked and not doing well. It was his left ring finger. As the fight went on, there were tight, close grappling exchanges, glove grab, something like that. So at the end of the second round, his finger wasn't there anymore. It was suddenly that you noticed that there was a missing digit. And essentially the finger had bent all the way back into his glove. It broke off. whatever you want to say. And it surprised a lot of us. It surprised John Morgan and CM Punk, the commentators. It surprised me as well to go on there, and Kaposa on Twitter, and all of us that are watching these things as they happen. And I don't know if I'm surprised or unironically not surprised, because I've been covering and watching this sport for a long time. I've seen cauliflower ears explode. I've seen compound fractures on hands and feet and legs, and you've seen broken bones. You can think of them. You can think of the broken pieces. We've even had, fingers snap in half, but we haven't seen fingers go away. We still have something new happen in the sport that makes us go, whoa, I didn't know this was possible, because I would not have been able to say you could lose a digit. I mean, you're not losing a limb per se, but you could lose a digit. Thankfully, Pliev's finger was reattached successfully. And I guess he already is in good spirits. He called out Dana White to say, what did he say? He said, look at me. I'm willing to lose a finger to excel at this sport, basically. So he kind of selling himself. And he isn't deterred from the sport. He's not going anywhere. He's going to probably heal up and compete sooner than he should, because, what are you going to do? And if you had seen him, it was about as perfect, that stereotypical Russian unbreakable atmosphere, feeling and kind of persona, because the guy wasn't screaming. He was just like, man, that's kind of annoying. I wish I could keep fighting. As they're putting Vaseline on the wound, as they're icing his hand, he's just like,
oh, like his other fingers were just being like, if he dies, he dies.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And dude, like, there was maybe a 15 or 20-minute break during which nobody knew where the finger was.
Because
it was being searched for.
Because the way it came back, it went back and around into the hole of the glove, the finger hole. So people didn't know, nobody had seen where it went. And so there was an actual call, look in the stands. There was an actual cameraman who was sent, hey, look under the cage, see if you see a finger. Xian Xian, I think, posted on Twitter, I think I found it. It was just a spot of blood. It wasn't the finger. And then we finally figured out where the finger was. But where's the finger? And FingerGate trended on Twitter because of that. So I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons.
Man, it's crazy. Like, the sport finds new ways to surprise us. I was looking at that and thinking, like, well, maybe he was just trying to cut weight, so he just. But yeah, that was definitely crazy stuff. And you wouldn't expect that to happen in Philly, of all places. So, but anyway, I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment comes courtesy of the UFC's welterweight division, which is trucking along. The latest announced fight that matters here. Wonder Boy Thompson will be taking on recent title challenger Gilbert Burns on July 10th. That is the same card as Dustin and Connor's trilogy. So definitely looking forward to that fight. And it begs a lot of questions as far as the welterweight division, like the title picture of it. And I guess the biggest thing we're noticing here, Colby Covington without a dance partner right now. Not surprised at all. And
Colby is out there on social media, like, proclaiming himself the backup to the Usman next title defense, saying he'll be there and he'll be on weight. So
with that shitty beard. That's an awful beard. All right. So that's my I'm not surprised. So let's move things along here. One Championship is coming back to action here for the US audience. They're going to have a TNT fight night this Wednesday. DJ Eddie Alvarez and Rugru part of the proceedings. Do you think that this event is going to draw major attention? Gentlemen, do you think this is something that's going to, catch a little bit outside of our bubble at least?
I'll dive on this one because I know Duffy has more to say about these fights, I imagine. This is about this card, one on TNT 1, which is what it's being called. Very creative, I know, but what are you going to do? It's happening live to American audiences, 10 p.m. on the East Coast. Unfortunately, West Coast people, I'm not making this up, and you're kind of screwed here. West Coast audiences will have the West Coast tape delay. Like, remember how Bellator used to do that? We're going to hold on to so it will be 10 o'clock p.m. everywhere.
Oh, get the hell
so
out of here.
Actually, Duffy, you might actually have a delay. I'm not sure if it's going to be how far it's going to stagger. I think it's just West Coast 10 and then everybody else 10 Eastern. But this card is about as good as they could have made for an American audience. They have all the most recognizable fighters they could trot out there in any possible way to get people to go, hey, we're here, we're not gone, we're still around, we have fighters. Mighty Mouse, Eddie Alvarez, 2 UFC champions, Rug, who's become an international sensation of some sort. And I can't say the same about Tyler McGuire, but what are you going to do? And don't they have kickboxing and Muay Thai, one kickboxing and a Muay Thai championship fight? And you can speak to those more, but this is that one chance. This is that you look at the card and go, I know what you're doing here. You're putting all your eggs in that basket and you're screwing all the rest of the fight cards in the next 6 months because all your fighters you want to show off are going to be on this card. I'll be watching, but I'm not really sure I'm going to be covering it. What about you, Duff?
We have always been very willing to kind of dunk on one championship and all the stuff they do that, frankly, is, sometimes a little foolish or makes no sense. But I don't hate one championship. I don't want them to fail. All I want them to do is make it easy for me to see their fights and be transparent about things like their vaunted weight cutting policy. This is a good step in the direction towards all those things. Like, stupid tape delay aside, that's a rant for another day. Like, if I end up watching this in Houston before Ant does in LA, that's some bullshit in the year 2021. But yeah, you said it all. They loaded this card with the most recognizable names to the average North American MMA fan. They do have some Muay Thai and kickboxing fights on the card
with little gloves.
And I don't know where Rod Tang would measure just in a vacuum among the best kickboxers in his weight class, but he's pretty high, but on the list of the dopest kickboxers in his weight class, he is number one. They call him the Thai Tank, and he is a fucking nightmare. I can't wait to watch him. And I'm a guy that, I kind of like grappling. Like, I can always enjoy a kickboxing event, but I don't have the bandwidth to follow it. But Rod Tang is appointment viewing for me. Yeah, I'm excited for this. And as far as will it bring in eyes, I think it will bring in some eyes. It's not fair to compare this, like American cable event to, like, we're not comparing it to Carano versus Cyborg. We need to compare it to, the events Bellator just rolled out, UFC on ABC, things like that. That's what it can be fairly compared to. And one championship has done everything they could reasonably be expected to do to make this a success. Like, it's a smart, well put together card. Yeah, I don't even have any punchlines about that except for the stupid tape delay.
I was excited until I found out about the tape delay. And the worst part about that is, like, I have I've got legit way to watch it. Like, I have YouTube TV, TNT is on there. I can watch TNT right now. I can record it and do all this other stuff. I'm gonna have to find an illegal means to watch the show because they decided tape delay was the way to go on the West Coast, which, from my understanding, Southern California is a big market for mixed martial arts. Seems like that would be a market you'd like to be able to watch it live in. Just a random thought. Wow, that's really, really stupid. So, all right, fellas.
Can we have one last dunking moment?
Absolutely.
This one TNT show, this one on Wednesday, is live. The ones on the consecutive Wednesdays are not live. They're tape delayed, and they still will be tape delayed. You, Ant Walker, will be tape delayed on a tape delay. So there you go. I had to leave that.
Jesus Christ. Like, do they not understand how live sports work?
No.
Jeez. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm just one of billions that are trying to watch this. So what the hell am I worth? Whatever. All right, fellas, let's move things along before I get any more agitated. Let's go to the speed bag, and this is where I get to flex my authority on you mofos. So you're gonna have 10 seconds to answer a few questions, and let's see, make sure this is loaded up. I gotta change it from my workout setting to the show. So
now he's just showing off, Duffy.
Showing. I'm not showing. I'm not flexing.
Working out. Yeah.
I'm not showing my Herculean physique right now.
I'm back in the gym, baby.
I'm just talking to my friends about how big my pecs are. All right, so I'll start with you on this first question, Ben. Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega are coaching the next season of Tough. Why?
I don't know. Take the show out and back and shoot it. And if you are going to run it, why with these two guys? Like, there's nothing to recommend it.
All right, and Jay.
The fact that they're still doing it breaks my heart. But these are the wrong two coaches. Why not have Peter Yan and Aljo Sterling? Then you can build it up to something.
Very, very good idea right there. All right, Jay, I'll begin with you on this one. How do you feel about Combate Americas rebranding to Combate Global?
They need to put out English broadcasts for Combate Global, and I'll be fine with it because so far it's Spanish language only.
All right, Ben.
I don't care about the name change. I mean, it doesn't roll off the tongue quite as easily, but except for the fact that I have to get a new hat, you know.
All right, Ben, you'll get the last question here. The PFL announced rule changes for the season, including that fighters will lose playoff points for missing weight. Will this make a difference?
I think they will. I think most of the rule changes, including the one for the weight penalty, will make a positive difference. I still don't know about this setup, but this is giving it a better chance.
Jay.
The rule changes are weird this year. I don't want to get too far into that. If a guy's missing or guy or girl's missing weight already for $1 million tournament, you done messed up.
Agreed. All right. So now it's time for me to change that clock over to 30 seconds. That's how much time I'll have to answer all three questions in succession. The clock will begin after reading the first question. Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega are coaching the next season of Tough. Why? Because they had a choice, and that choice was to make things as boring and lifeless as possible because they gave us this. No knock on them as fighters, but wow, what a trash rollout for the coaches. Okay, Combates America rebranding. I just want a hat as well. It's a great way to make the brand sound bigger than it is without really changing anything. And the PFL rule changes, I mean, whatever. Like, people missing weight for this tournament, just slap yourself. All right, so gentlemen, yeah,
I've been trying to chew on something about Tough. Why wouldn't the UFC merge Tough and Contender Series, merge the concepts, in that the coaches are coaching upcoming Contender Series fighters? They come into the UFC gym 6 weeks ahead of time to get ready for their Contender Series matches. Isn't that
because it makes too much sense?
I mean, just totally spitballing. That sounds like a better idea than the same live in the house thing in the COVID pandemic, by the way.
I love the idea, but I'm scared of it because I'm worried that it would ruin the Contender Series. Because right now the Contender Series has the perfect pace of little get to know you segment, fight. Little get to know you segment, fight. Oprah hands out the contracts, and we're done. Like, if they start interspersing that with people, like, you know, pissing on each other's food, you know, and getting in stupid ass arguments.
Man, it's just a spritz now. It's just a spritz.
Christ. Like, you know, and like just a bunch of like bleeped out swears from like drunk assholes yelling at each other. Like,
fair enough.
Great. Now it's ruined something else.
Yeah, that show just needs to die. I'm not understanding. Like, the moment that they couldn't, like, Aljo versus Jan, I didn't even think about that coaching matchup, but that would be fantastic. That makes all the sense in the world. If you could have agreed to have Connor and Dustin do it, that might have been something halfway decent. But they really dropped the ball by not having Covington versus Masvidal. That was the matchup to make for Tough. That's the only way that I think I would have cared about the show. And when I say care, like, actually watch the entire first episode. I haven't watched the first episode of Tough in so long. It's been a very long time. That show sucks. So, yeah, to have two guys who have no smoke with each other, you know, respectful at least to one another. You know, they're fine fighters to watch, but they don't necessarily ooze all this crazy charisma and personality. It just, yeah, throw it in rice. Trash. All right. So Bellator is making its second appearance on Showtime this Friday, and the main event will be between Ryan Bader and Lyoto Machida in a rematch. In what 6-7 years in the making, I think it was since they first met in the UFC, and this is actually going to be the first fight in the light heavyweight Grand Prix. Quickly, how do 2012? 2012. Okay, 9 years. Wow. All right. Well, time is flying. All right. So, how do you think this fight is going to play out? Do we see a repeat, or are we going to have a much different contest this time around?
Man, Machida, I forget my scorecard for Machida Davis, but the fact that it was I had to remember my scorecard because it was a close enough contest gives me a little hope for the 42, soon to be 43-year-old Lyoto Machida, who, you know, uses quick reflexes and response time, and he has good timing, and he's older now, and it's gone out the window, and he throws flying knees. You know, I'm on team. This is the karate side of me. I'm on team Machida till I die. I can't not disclose that part of me. So I'm going to always root for that sort of Machida karate. I mean, it's still the Dragon era in my heart. But man, you know what's going to happen. Blanket, 3 rounds, 5 rounds, holding down Machida, working on doing what he did, like he did to Matt Mitrione. So I'm the gloom and doom guy. Duffy, you got to bring me out of this.
I can't bring you out of it. I have Bader winning this one. Bader looked slow and labored against Nemkov. Like, I was shocked within the first 60 seconds because I had Bader in that one. And within 60 seconds, I was like, oh man, this is not it. Having said that, I don't think he's slowed to the point where he won't be able to get his hands on Machida and get Machida down. Machida, if anything, has slowed more, and he had a style that in the first place depended more on movements and reflexes. Yeah, I have Bader. It might be a grind. It might be spectacular if he's feeling salty and just starts like really pounding him on the ground, because he has brutal ground and pound when he wants to. He just tends to, not want to overextend himself. I mean, he could have finished Matt Mitrione. He just didn't. Maybe he'll feel a sense of urgency here. Maybe he'll feel something to prove. A lot of us were wondering whether he'd go back to light heavyweight at all. But yeah, I have Bader.
I've got Bader on this one, and I don't think he even goes to the finish. I don't think he's going to feel necessarily something to prove, at least in that regard, for this, because this is a Grand Prix. This is stay healthy, don't lose, get $1 million when it's all over with. Like, he certainly would love to repeat the heavyweight Grand Prix where he didn't absorb a single significant strike. And he has the potential to do that in this. I mean, what got him iced against Machida in their first fight was just rushing in with his chin out, which is not something Bader is going to do this time, I don't think. And even if he were to do that, I don't think Machida's fast enough anymore to really capitalize on it the way he did back then. So I think Bader makes this certainly not the most entertaining main event, but it's going to be effective and get him into the next round. So, man, but I'm excited to see another Grand Prix roll out. I don't think this is going to be the barn burner to get us excited, but it's a Grand Prix. Like, we love that shit.
I wish they'd finish one before starting another one. Like
that,
the welterweight was still going when featherweight started. Featherweight's still going, and we're ways out before and light heavyweight. Like, ideally, it would be to stagger them so that there's the break time for one round allows the next one to go, so they could alternate. But it's a tournament. What are you going to do?
So, when the featherweight tournament started, had like at what stage was the welterweight one at? I'm not even remembering, because I think this makes sense because now we know the final to the featherweight. So, okay, we can start another tournament cycle and they can just hype that particular fight up for what it is. And then also too, since it's a title fight, it can have its own sort of lane now. But do you guys remember off the top of your head? Because I certainly can't.
I cannot.
It was still going. I do remember, because I think on this show I might have said, "Why don't you finish this candy bar before opening another candy bar?" So I feel like that's the Bellator. Let's look ahead to see what's going on. And
what if I want to taste a Twix when I've bitten into a Snickers already?
I mean, here's the thing, and this is something I've actually railed about against UFC cards, is that we can't enjoy what happened because the next one is going around the corner, and fight week means we have to watch the next fighters. We can't celebrate how awesome Pitbull is for multiple reasons. I mean, Patricio Pitbull, and I know I'm derailing this a little bit, defended this title for, what was it, the 5th time in a row or something like that, setting a Bellator record. Within a minute and a half, AJ McKee was in the cage, so the dude couldn't even celebrate his own win over a rival. And then now it's next to the next, and then the tournament starts. So it feels like he didn't get his moment to shine. So I feel like these tournaments are kind of bumping into themselves.
Okay, fair point there. All right, so the UFC is also back this week. We took a week off and enjoyed our Saturdays with our families. That was fun. Yeah. But back to business this Saturday on ABC. Marvin Vettori is taking on short notice replacement Kevin Holland. Now let's get a quick who you got in this one. Ben, who you got?
I do have Vettori in this one. Like I think his advantages in kind of physical strength are going to serve him well against Holland. I think he'll probably be able to hold his own on the feet. And so if it goes to the ground at all, it'll because he wants it there. So yeah, off the top of my head, I'm going to take Vettori by decision in this one.
Give me 2 for that embracing the grind thing. I don't know. I don't necessarily root for Holland, but I root for chaos. And I feel thank you, Tyler Treese, you ruined me as a fight analyzer. That I feel like Kevin Holland coming in on extremely short notice and kicking Marvin Vettori in the face would totally upset the apple cart. That would be an unexpected event. But man, I just see the strength of Marvin Vettori. As soon as he closes the distance, his chin is very tough. It took a fair amount of what Izzy Adesanya did, and he took Izzy down. Like, I can see that fight playing out very similarly, except for Izzy won't get up as quick, or Holland won't get up like Izzy could. And give me Vettori probably by, similar to Brunson, the Brunson fight, and Holland off his back goes, "Come on, not again," and looks at the camera all sad.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and root for the chaos. I'm going to go ahead and go for the unexpected. I see Kevin Holland winning this, and he shouldn't. He's not the stronger grappler. He's not the stronger man, period. And he's someone who seems to be devoid of game plan, and he just goes out there and just does whatever he does. But I think in a short notice replacement, that's kind of what you need. You kind of need someone like that. You need that sort of wild card mentality, and this plays right into his hands. On top of that, Vettori is known to be a rather emotional, hot-headed sort of guy. Kevin Holland could definitely rattle him and get him to do something stupid and find himself getting caught with some long-range striking. I think that's a definite possibility here. So, man, I think too, the promotion has a lot of faith in Kevin Holland, considering his placement on the previous Fight Night card, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the first time the same fighter has headlined 2 consecutive Fight Night cards. I think I cannot think of any. I can think of like people who fought on at least near consecutive cards, like the Chris Lieben fighting in 2 weeks thing.
It was geez, I had the number, I had the information in front of me. Figueiredo is obviously the pay-per-view one. Yeah, I don't remember off the top. Bisping's the second because he fought GSP and then he headlined against Gastelum. So yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, so for
I mean, this is UFC
card, yeah.
This is UFC on ABC, but it's still not a pay-per-view. It's a fight night. So yeah, I think that you're correct.
Yeah. So and he definitely would be the first person to headline 2 UFC on ABC cards, right?
No,
was it the Brunson?
Brunson was ESPN.
Oh, the ESPN. Okay, damn it.
Because Max was AB. The Max.
What he
did before Calvin Cater was the
that was the ABC one. Yeah. I thought I made up some cool shit on the fly.
Hey man, I dig it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to take your title here, the stats, and clearly I don't know what I'm doing. So so yeah, I'm actually looking forward to seeing an upset of some sort on this. But quickly before we move on here, give me one fight on this card that you're really looking forward to.
The very first fight on the card that doesn't belong as the very first fight on the card. You know the fight I'm talking about. Jim A10 Miller is the opener. The guy who has, I believe, will have the most fights in UFC history is the very first curtain jerker on the ESPN Plus early prelims of a 15-fight card. What? He's a main card. He should be a main card fighter till his legs fall off or whatever other things happen with Lyme disease, but he's okay now. It doesn't make sense why Jim Miller is where he is, but I really like this fight because Joe Solecki isn't going to knock his face off. That's not Solecki's game. It's going to be a fun grappling battle. I really like what Solecki did when he fought Austin Hubbard. I really like what he did in the Contender Series when he put, I don't remember that other guy, to sleep. This is a guy who's grappling I'm really interested to see, and Jim Miller is going to go right into that. You know, Jim Miller will dive head first into a guillotine just to take top position, break the grip and step over to half guard or so, you know. So this has fun grappling exchange written all over it. So I'm into this first fight.
Trivia question to give to Jay. Not for now, just answer at any time. But Jim Miller has headlined at least 3 UFC cards. If this plays out, will he be the first fighter to fight first and last on a UFC card? And if not, will he be the first one to fight first on a UFC card after having headlined one?
See, that the last part is definitely the where you approach it, because the first and last, no, and has something.
Wonder Boy did that.
Yep.
There you go.
Good knowledge there, Tiger. That is the question, is to go from headliner to card opener is an interesting one. I think of flyweight title challengers like a Wilson Hayes. I don't know off the top of my head, but I picture that kind of treatment where to go from fighting for a title to like Joe Soto fighting TJ Dillashaw. What was his next fight? Was it a card opener? I can't recall. But that's a good. I'm gonna make sure the answer to that will be on the UFC on ABC 2 edition of Fight Facts on Monday or Tuesday.
Outstanding.
Very nice. Very nice.
I am looking forward to William Knight versus Da Un Jung. Knight was supposed to fight Alonzo Menafield, I guess 2 weekends ago at this point. That was an appropriate matchup. It was two guys, I mean, just visually, like the two like completely yoked individuals with, generally similar approaches to the fight game. And I favored Knight in that one just as the guy who was a little more composed, who probably had a little better gas tank, relatively speaking. This is a bad swap in for Alonzo Benefield. Da Un Jung is a guy. He is a 2021 Korean fighter who fights like a 2007 Korean fighter, like all the stereotypes of Korean fighters, just complete wildness, like aggression, savagery on the feet. And for a guy that's done that for as long as Da Un Jung has, to not have any knockout losses is saying quite a bit. And Jung has done pretty well since getting to the UFC without really compromising that style. Like, either Knight's going to do something that we haven't seen before, leave Jung looking at the lights, or it's going to be a bad night for him. And for that reason, I'm kind of excited for this 205-pound freak show.
All right, so the fight I want to highlight here is between Nina Ansaroff and Mackenzie Dern. I think from a stylistic standpoint, this should be a fairly interesting one to see how far Dern's stand-up has progressed, and she's looked better and better. Still, obviously needing some improvements on that regard. But where I find this most interesting, and perhaps it's now the sentimental parent in me, is that this is Nina Ansaroff's return from giving birth. We've seen a renewed Mackenzie Dern since she became a mother. Like, she's making weight and she's taking this a lot more seriously now. I'm curious as to what the two mothers will do against one another in this. And Jay, maybe another one for you. You might be able to answer this one off the top of your head. Is this the first time two mothers have fought each other in the UFC?
I was thinking about that, and didn't McMahon fight Marion Renault? I feel like Renault triangled her. Yes.
Okay,
I don't think it will be, but I can also answer the question. I just popped into my head a minute ago. I know for a fact there have been tough fighters. I mean, it's tough, so it's kind of an asterisk. But like Court McGee, his first UFC fight was a headliner when he fought Chris McRae, and then he came back. And I'm pretty sure his fight against the other Lima was the opener of the fight card. So
McMahon's also fought Lauren Murphy.
All right, so cool. But yeah, those are the fights that we're looking forward to outside of the main and co-main, which that co-main, yes, please inject it directly into my veins between Arnold Allen and Sadiq Youssef. All right, so now let's talk about what really matters.
Yes.
Okay. Full Metal Dojo is coming back Friday evening. The main event is between former UFC featherweight, and he's got like 55 fights as an MMA fighter. I know he's got an extensive Muay Thai record as well. Will Chope. He is taking on two aptly titled flyweights as a tag team, Bank and No Money. So let me ask you this, gentlemen: does Will Chope break even?
How in the hell is Will Chope only 30? For as long as I've been aware of this guy, I mean, I assumed he'd be like 38. Like, hell, he's been fighting for Full Metal Dojo for like 5 years. It's unbelievable. If you want serious analysis, give me Chope. Like, neither Bank nor No Money are very good. So.
I mean, come on.
I saw them do their thing. Like, neither of them is great. And
this is the first fighter they're going to fight, and I say that with respect to Mikhail Vitrilla, a 1-1 Russian middleweight who they choked him out and then choked him out. I think they tapped him out twice, which, by the way, in terms of unexpected, all level, just the greatest things you can see is the fact that Vitrilla and Bank and No Money agreed after he was choked out, let's do it again. Come on. But Will Chope is dangerous enough to and smart enough to fight looking straight ahead. This is something that happened in Fight Circus too. I'm pretty well versed in the subject. When Stephen Panda Banks fought 3 guys, he didn't look at any of them. He looked this way. So if he's looking here, they're here and here because they're trying to surround him, and he had his back against the ropes to be able to see all of them and strike and kick and work all of them. He won that fight, by the way, and got one of the greatest paintings I've ever seen awarded in a fight show, which was the Bill Clinton in the dress, and it said Epstein didn't kill himself. Just woe on top of woe on top of magic on that. So give me Will Chope in an event that, my God, man, I am ready for the phone booth fight. I am ready for, quote, new generation Siamese kickboxing, which I guess I should describe. Two guys, kickboxers, Muay Thai guys. I have the information somewhere, but 2 kickboxers are taped or tied together, and they have to fight 2 other guys that are also tied together. So it's just, I have no idea what the hell is going to happen. And I'm so ready for it. I can't even describe it. I mean, Bob Sapp's going to be there. Bob Sapp will be involved. Bob Sapp will probably be the new main event as he gets to a fight with John Nutt. So, I mean, Fight Circus 3, I feel bad that I'm more excited about this card than 3 majors putting on noteworthy events. And here we go, Friday night on Cam Soda for free. Fight Circus 3's got me. Fisting for Dollars is its name, by the way.
It's just beautiful name there. Like, now, one question that needs to be answered, like the Siamese boxing, I'm all in for. I can't wait to see that. Will Chope against 2 people sounds fantastic. But what the hell is Indian leg wrestling?
Oh, you never did that as a kid?
No.
You lay on your back and you link your legs together, and you have to try and pull the other one with your leg.
So you're laying head to toe,
Yeah.
like next to each other.
Yeah.
So like your feet are by my head, my feet are by
Yeah.
your head, and we lock the 2 legs that are facing each other.
The leg
and
up.
yeah,
I mean, this is something you do in college. And
Yeah,
there are 2 Instagram models that are
much
doing
different
it.
college
So.
experience than that. But I mean, hey, sign me up. Like, this whole event sounds absolutely nuts. And Friday night, yeah, I do my train on Fridays, and when I'm done after doing like serious Muay Thai, because I'm like a real tough guy. That's going to be a great way to wind down. So I'm looking forward to it.
Let me tell you what, it's going to. Oh, there's also a mystery fight where even I don't have any information of what it's going to be, and it's taking place at the I think it's called the Sea Gallery. Anyway, the last Bare Knuckle Kingdom event they had, the one that was outside where the guy TKO'd due to heat exhaustion, and it was out in the sun. It was beautiful. The landscape was terrible. That's where they're doing this Fight Circus thing. So I feel. Okay, full disclosure, I am not paid or compensated in any way for Full Metal Dojo for how excited I am about this event. This is me speaking as a person that likes chaos, and there will be chaos.
come on, Full Metal Dojo, send the man a hat. That's all you would need to turn this journo with, like a free hat.
I'm just saying. I'm not saying anything.
This Full Metal Dojo make onesies for babies.
I will make a call.
Would you put something that said "fisting for dollars" on your baby?
Yeah, maybe not. Just the company logo. All right, so
we'll work something out.
So as has become the custom sometimes here on the show, Adonis has decided this is the end of this edition of Unleashed. So big thank you to Jay and Ben once again holding down the panel. Always a pleasure talking some absolute foolishness with 2 good friends. So you can find their work on Sherdog.com. You can find my work on MMA On Point and the Body Lock. So remember, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. So stay beautiful, stay positive, stay Siamese boxed, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.